new technologies that are going exploring now with AR, VR, and XR, extended reality concepts is getting more appealing, and this is what we decided to kind of explore further down. So I would touch basically the problems that we discover working on these projects is mostly it's object to model, moving from the physical to the model, and we just represented this simplified. There's a manual modeling. You can start, building the manual model. We did this with the local VETA school university. We did the Kenan completely, from the bones, blood vessels and everything else. It took us forever to do that. It's literally a very, very labor extensive process. The automated way is we can use it with many tools. Obviously photogrammetry is something is becoming very popular lately because it doesn't involve much of the a more expensive equipment that you're going to have with the laser 3D scanning or the structured light scanning. So there's methods in 2 and 3 are displayed in the pictures. The laser is or lidar is something that is depending on what you need to scan, the size of the object. It is still quite expensive. But the alternative is with the structured light scanning, which is using basic projectors and the 2 cameras on the side, and which is displayed on with number 3. And with the manual tools, which are used also as a post-processing, most of these tools from the Blender, SketchUp, Mesh Pictures, all the CAD tools, SolidWorks, 3D Studio Maxes. It is obviously the expertise is required to operate these the softwares, and that probably is the main obstacle together with the modeling to move very large collections or really large amounts of the into digitalization platform. So today, just a quick touch up for the 3D printing. 3D printing was in the past very expensive. 20 years ago, printers costed $1 million. Today they're costing, even starting from a couple $100, and that used to cost 50,000. So the ratio is huge, and we basically these days have a very precise micro, small scale, nanometer size almost. We can play on that level, but it certainly goes to very large scale robotic printings all the way, and it's utilized across various types of materials. It started from plastics, resins. Today's metal is becoming very popular. It's becoming increasingly cheaper. It's the same as a plastic 3D printing 20 years ago. So printers today are very expensive, but the price is going to go down heavily in the next 10, 15 years. To the organized printing the live materials. So our intent was to identify the problem. What is the most pain point in this process, especially with the with the institution. And we realized it's not just in a certain industry, it's across the industry. It's rapid investment. The technology is taking a high pace, and there is a lot of horizontal dissipation on the application side, which you can translate. If you have like virtual reality, you will have it suddenly, when it started now, you have like 20, 30 different platforms that you can do different things. We don't know who's going to be the winner, and that's kind of always issues, because in old, CAD modeling world, we already know who are the winners, and in these new worlds and new technologies, it's going to take some time before we get the winners, and then investing in each of these potential winners is a really time-consuming process. Obviously, we need a high-scale operators to process these models, post-processing, build virtual environments, depends what we're doing. And then obviously the museums is highly likely that they're going to keep up with these expertise. Even universities are kind of getting on the edge, but especially because the equipment and the actual development is very expensive, and the whole process moving to the digital is getting expensive. Obviously, we had this COVID impact, and one of our guest speakers is going to address also that issue, and the new digital generation of the kids coming up that are just digital. And then we finalized it. We arranged a project to determine current state of digitization for the museums in Sarajevo. National Museum of the Bastion has actually 6.5 million artifacts in collection, and that's one of the largest museums in the region. So it's you can imagine the size of the scale of the of the effort that is needed to be done, at least to move it in any directions. So we organize already in-person meetings with the directors, museum directors, as representatives. We are conducting online survey, to get exact ratio and percentages on each, and the methods on each digitalization transformation effort in each museum. And obviously, we're going to address it later and try to wrap it up, as Anita just mentioned, up in the one official publication report. What's the status on this on a sector. So idea behind on number 5, we are launching in parallel. Actually, already started several efforts. Small diversified pilot projects across the sector, and then obviously with publication report and maybe engagement with the government and much larger projects, we can proceed in a larger transformation effort. So Anita, I think so. This is all I had for you today.
Thank you, Edin. I guess I would like to give a floor to Jorge Cardoso, and he's assistant professor at the University of Coimbra. So the topic is accessible, tangible user interfaces in extended reality experiences for cultural heritage. Jorge, welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you are seeing my slides already.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for the invitation in the first place, and congratulations for the project, for the FabLab project that you are running. My name is Jorge Cardoso. I'm from the University of Coimbra in Portugal, and I'd like to talk a bit about tangible user interfaces in extended reality experiences. And I will start briefly by talking about the motivation and the approach that we took in the work that I'm going to present next. So interaction in virtual reality, it's still mostly done through handheld controllers. And these controllers, they impose a rather arbitrary mapping between what users do in the physical environment and what happens in the virtual response. So they have arbitrary mappings, and they also, because of this, they provide a low quality haptic experience, because they are the same controllers regardless of what virtual object you are manipulating. And of course, we now have various virtual reality systems that are capable of detecting users' hands and gestures, but you still get no haptics, so you don't get the feeling of touching an object. And gestures, they may still be hard to learn and then to perform. So in this, for us, we consider that touching an object is an important aspect of the experience, and of course, an important part of our everyday experience. And also for cultural heritage context. So we know that people always want to touch things in museums, despite the various don't touch signs. People still want to touch, so it's an important part of our experience. And we wanted to provide this touching experience in virtual reality and augmented reality experiences. But we also wanted a solution that was flexible, that was cheap, that was easy to make. And so it was accessible to a variety of users. And so we wanted something that used low-cost materials like paper or wood or 3D printing, along with possibly fabrication or even manual techniques. We also wanted to use open source software that could be programmed in an accessible open language like HTML. And for this, we chose to use the A-frame framework. And also we wanted to target devices that most people already have. So of course we can have a fully fledged virtual reality device but not everybody has one of those. They are still somewhat expensive, hard to set up, but there are now ubiquitous devices like smartphones that can be used as virtual reality devices. And we also wanted a low processing detection technique for detecting the objects. So we wanted a solution that would work on a smartphone. And so for this, we used the traditional visual markers that we sometimes find in augmented reality experiences, because these are also easy to print, they are easy to apply on a variety of objects. So this kind of characterizes the approach that we took. And so now I would like to describe two of those experiences, two of the applications that we have created following this philosophy and this approach. One of the applications is called Spectare, the Spectare viewer. And the idea here was to somehow reimagine the viewing experience of stereoscopic photography, which was perhaps the most common way of viewing photographs in the late 19th, the early 20th century. But we wanted to reimagine this in light of our current technology. In light of the current virtual reality technology that we can use. And this project was done in collaboration with another project, the Santa Cruz project, which is digitally reconstructing the monastery of Santa Cruz as it was in 1834. So there was also kind of a timing coincidence because the earliest stereoscopes were created in 1832. So it kind of provided a nice coincidence between the technology that we were trying to reimagine and then the project, the digitization project that was going on. And so it would be a nice way of also disseminating the results for this project. And so what we did, I'm going actually to show you that in the video. I hope you can hear the audio. I think not. Maybe you're not hearing the audio because I'm not hearing it here, but I will kind of describe over. So the device that we ended up creating after a few prototypes and iterations is the one that you can see there being held. And it's mainly a wooden device that is very close. So if you know, if you are familiar with some of the stereoscopic viewers, it's very close to the Holmes stereoscope. But we added the capability of inserting a smartphone. And so actually the smartphone acts as the screen, as the virtual reality screen. But you still get most of the original experience of picking up a stereo card, inserting the stereo card on the device, and then viewing the contents. The difference is that now there's a mediation through the smartphone, and now the contents that you can see, that you can experience, are not limited to stereo photographs. So you can see 360 photographs, you can see video, you can also create experiences where you see a photograph, but also hear a soundscape of that location. And so we have kind of the additional capabilities that the smartphone provides us, while still getting that manual, that haptic experience of picking up paper stereo cards and placing them on the device. And also, it's not perhaps very clear in the video without the audio, but the device also kind of gives you a new functionality that the original stereoscope doesn't give you, which is being able to respond to the distance of the stereo card on the device. So you can use it as another kind of input degree to the system, and so that you can, for example, you can change the viewing experience, you can change the contents as you move the stereo card closer or farther away on the device. For example, you can use this to show a time progression of a photograph of a location through photographs taken at different times, for example. And so this, of course, and to me, an important part of the device is not perhaps the device itself, the final result, but how it was designed and how it was constructed. And it was a very handcrafted process, so it was not in any way industrial. And of course, we started out with sketches and various paper prototypes. We then moved on to creating blueprints for machining some of the parts. Some of the parts were manually done with molds, for example, for the curved surfaces. In the final stages, we ended up using laser engraving. And of course, all the parts, all the components were assembled manually. Although the device went through a lot of iterations that I didn't show here, they could more or less be easily reproduced by any maker. So they could even be perhaps, if you had the blueprint, they could even perhaps be used as part of, for example, a school project where students would assemble a device and later on create their own digital contents, because everything is open, even the software part. So it's something that, in my opinion, it's very in line with the maker movement, and that was also kind of the purpose of the project. Another project that I'd like to talk about is the Virtual Guia Fortress project. And this is about a landmark in Macau, the Guia Fortress, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage. And this was created in the 17th century to defend Macau. And inside the fortress, there's a church and a lighthouse, which are the most iconic features of the fortress. And so in this project, we wanted to explore 3D printing, specifically explore 3D printing as a way to create an augmented reality or virtual reality experience for exploring that landmark. And so here the challenge was 3D printing in connection with the approach, with the general approach that I explained earlier. So the result, the final result, this went through a lot of testing, a lot of prototypes, but the final result was a layered object where each layer was based on an historical map of Macau that represented a different time period. And then on the top layer represents those iconic buildings, the church and the lighthouse. And each layer gives you access to digital information in the form of augmented reality or virtual reality. So you have actually the possibility of entering in an immersive virtual reality environment in the top layer. And this video shows an early version of the device and associated software, but I think it gives a good idea of how the object works. So these were some of the explorations that we did early on. And you see that there is a boat, a small boat object that is actually the main interaction element. So of course the sea was an important factor for the fortress, because it was mainly to defend from sea attacks, and so the boat object was chosen as the main interaction object. And it's not easy to see here, but the markers themselves, so the features that are detected by the smartphone are dynamic in the sense that the system can detect the boat when it's outside of the main layer. Then it also detects the boat as a different object when it's inserted in each layer. And so the system is able to react differently to these physical objects. And this is the top layer. It's also not apparent in the video, but the components they are attached to the other layers by very small magnets. So you have a kind of a snap-in kind of interaction. And it's also not shown in the video, but in this top layer, depending on the location where you put that boat element, you could also enter a virtual, completely artificial environments, in immersive environments in VR. So the final object was kind of thought as a possible souvenir that you could buy that represented that iconic location, and that you could afterwards experience with your own smartphone at home. For example, you could experience those digital contents, augmented reality or virtual reality contents. And so these are, of course, just two examples of virtual reality, augmented reality experiences that I think can be created with easy to find, easy to access materials, easy to fabricate. And 3D printing in particular, I think it allows very quick iterations. I didn't show here, but we did a lot of iterations with very different objects. And 3D printing affords this. So it's very easy to quickly iterate through different objects, different versions. We have flexibility in constructing replicas of existing objects, for example. It's easy to customize. It's also easy to share 3D models for 3D printing. And so, to me, one of the interesting aspects of 3D printing in connection with cultural heritage is that you can close the loop and take advantage of the immense quantity of digitized cultural heritage that exists today in the form of digital files. And you can close the loop and make them physical again, to provide that touching experience to other people through fabrication and in some situations through manual process, and of course in these examples through digital experiences in augmented and virtual reality. So this is it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jorge, very much. This is really interesting presentation. And I would just like to ask if someone maybe has some kind of questions or anything to ask, because Jorge has to leave us because of the lectures at the faculty. So please do ask now. Okay, just see. If not, I would like to kindly ask Andrea de Polo. He's a senior consultant at AcrossLimits to present the presentation on the topic how to survive the COVID in the cultural heritage sector.
Thank you, Anita. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I will give you a full presentation on how to survive sector. Let me tell you a little bit about today's presentation. I'll give you a brief background about myself, a best practice on high speed and high quality digitization, which I believe will be very beneficial and people attending this very valuable webinar. I will provide a couple of success stories. I will share also with you some ideas and recommendations on how to optimize your financial resources to make your museum or your cultural institution economically sustainable in this difficult time. And last but not least, I will make two presentations, one about Zeugel, which is probably the best company for high quality reproduction of documents and paper and manuscripts, and AcrossLimits, which is the company that I'm also cooperating, providing effective solution to write European project and to help you to find the right partners to build the most reliable consortium for an European grant. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have a bachelor in fine art and photography from Rochester Institute of Technology. I've been studying at the Museum of Photography at George Eastman House. And I took the photographic activity test with the Image Permanence Institute also in Rochester. I've done more than 20 European projects in the last 25 years, and currently I'm consulting in a nanotechnology project called NEMOZine. Cultural heritage, 3D printing, and digitization is, I would say, my DNA and my main area of interest. So I'm definitely the right person, I hope, to provide a good recommendation to the people in this webinar. I've been working for many years in the Adinari Photographic Archive, and this is one of the case studies of this presentation. And as I said, I will also share with you some ideas where you might take some consideration to cooperate and use the services from AcrossLimits and Zeugel. How to be, this is basically the first recommendation that I have to share with you, how to be to remain in the market and be successful. Adinari, for example, has been in the market since 1839, so it is more than 170 years old photographic archive. And for us, one of the key to be successful was to look for European grants in the cultural heritage sector. Also, I've been personally very active in a standard and imaging association. So from my side, I will really encourage, the people from this audience, from Bosnia, Herzegovina, from East Europe, from all over Europe, to try to be involved in all these standard and 3D and imaging workshops or conferences or trade shows that are happening in Europe, in Asia, and in the US. This will be very important for you to remain in touch with people, but also to establish new opportunities with some of the most key vendors such as Adobe, Apple, HP, etc., etc. As a proof of concept with Adinari, I've been digitizing more than 330,000 images, and 400 images were added daily online, with only 3 people working for the digitization and 5 people for the metadata. So the experience that I share with you is not only a personal experience, but I think also reflect most of the situation that we can find in Sarajevo, in East Europe, and across Europe, where money are still an issue. This is, for example, I think a very interesting slide from Alinari, where we have on the left a traditional reprographic camera. On the center, we have a phase 1 digital camera. And on the right side, we have the storage for the original prints and array disks to save the digital files. So it is also very nice to see in this picture how the old, the current, and the future environment can work together in a very efficient way. So how to be successful in our business? Can be 2D, 3D, can be virtual reality or anything. I think in your institution, you have to provide a long-term investment where the technology is interoperable, is compatible with other existing technology standards and solutions, and is based as much as possible on an open source solution. So to me, as a recommendation, those 4 keywords are very, very important to consider. This is a solution for digitization of 2D and 3D objects. As you can see in this slide, we have daguerreotypes on silver halide, mercury, and other chemical compounds, but also with a frame. So when you are digitizing these 3D objects, you have different problems and difficulties in terms of reflection, in terms of using the right polarized filter to avoid any bad light issue, and to get the highest possible quality in the reproduction. Time is money, so I've been dealing with these issues for all my life. However, if you digitize with the right recommendation, this is the results. You can be able, even starting from a small image, to make enlargements as big as 10 meters by 20 meters, a cover from a single file the entire floor of your museum or your exhibition room. We are talking about 3D. I saw 2 very nice presentations from the 2 previous speakers, and this is an example on how I've been involved in a haptic and 3D representation of traditional images using the 3D representation of the photo with a fabric and other materials. So in this case, we didn't just make the 3D reconstruction of the photo, but we also used different material in order to allow for example, for the visitor to have by touching the surface, for example, of the beer or the hat of this portrait, the different feeling of the texture of that specific material. So it can be cold, it can be raw material, it can be a warm material, it can be a harsh material. And this is, I think, is not only about 3D, but it's also to transfer to the user feelings and emotion that only a simple 3D printing will not be able to achieve. So when you build a cultural heritage project in the 2D or 3D sector, you have to be very clear, very focused, and to set up, at least from the beginning, in a very economically driven solution that should be consistent and reliable from A to Z. I've been involved in many digitization initiatives, And this is basically the 9 golden points I would say that I would like to share with you if you want to create a very credible, a powerful project to identify the content to be digitized, to make the best high quality digitization, the content enrichment, post-processing, and then to share and preserve this material in the most efficient way. When you digitize your material, you have also to take in consideration some technical aspects, and those are again some recommendations in terms of the aperture of your lens, the color profile that you should use. In my experience, again, time is money, so we have set up using a specific script a way to don't spend more than 5 minutes for image enhancement on the histogram and in the dust and scratch removal. And I've been involved in a metadata and IPTC photo enrichment solution that was taking between 10 to 20 minutes to catalog this material. Last but not least, I suggest to preserve your material if you're using, for example, photo on JPEG 2000 or TIFF format. When you set up your workflow, you should always have a plan B. So if something doesn't work in plan A, you should have also an exit strategy or a different solution. And you have always to consider also what the competitors or the other partners are doing in the field. And last but not least, you have to be very active, as I'm doing now with Anida, and this wonderful opportunity to share your experience. And don't keep for yourself, but I think sharing is the key word to be successful, not only for yourself, but also for the rest of the world. So solutions that I'm going to share with you to make your museum, your gallery, or yourself more appealing in the industry or in the mass market is, for example, to use an auto tagging solution. In this case, is from Bulgaria, from a company called Imaga, where the technology is going to automatically identify a categorize based on the image recognition the right keyword according to the specific genre in front of the technology. Another solution is to make your repository searchable very effectively without spending too much in the cataloging. So again, using a visual interface that can classify the material using the color and the image similarity. So again, those solutions are very robust today. The technology was still, I would say, in the research level in the last 5 to 10 years, but today I will say, and probably also my friend Franco Niccolucci would be agree with me in his next presentation. Now those technologies are also quite available at the mass level. So let me introduce you now a very important technology from Germany. The company is called Zeuchel, and I think this solution can be very useful for some of the people attending this conference. If you are looking to digitize a manuscript or any kind of very fragile material, this company, which has a very long history, as you can see here, of success and a very strong market share, can provide, as you can see in this slide, a full set of solutions to help you to digitize your material. When we have, for example, newspapers, manuscript, or very fragile images, the problem is not only the preservation, but also is the accessibility, but also to digitize, because also for legal reasons, these documents might be needed to be used or reused later on. If you don't digitize this material on time, the text or the paper might break or might be untouchable later on. So Zeuchel, for example, is providing a very powerful, a very complete solution to digitize from small books, of even from losing paper, to full manuscript, very thick books. And also their software is really powerful. It's called OmniScan 12, and this solution will be able to fulfill all your needs in terms of metadata, content management, quality check, post-processing, and of course the scanning. With Zeuschel, you can really go with microfilm, with paper, or with books. You have a very complete set of solutions to digitize. And I think it's very important also for Bosnia, Herzegovina, and again for Europe and for many institutions, because they have a very large solution available from, I'm not say from few euro, but let's say from a small amount of money to very high demanding, a very technologically advanced solution that will accommodate all the different needs according also to different timing. So with books, you can go with this solution. You can also preserve the spine of the book using these solutions that can adapt the base of the scanning plate to the different degree of the book itself without damaging the spine. And if you have, let's say, maps, you can also go for the overhead solution. The next last recommendation for you is how to shift now those recommendations to a practical solution, again, to help my friend Anida, to all of you, to make money or to survive during the COVID. AcrossLimits might be the right answer for you. They have been, the company is based in Malta. They have more than 20 years of experience in European projects. They have done a lot of projects in Erasmus+, in ICT, in Horizon. Those are just some of the links and trademarks of European activities that they are involved, including the European Institute for Technology. And they can help you to do several things. So if you have an idea, they can help you to build a proposal, to improve your curriculum, to find the right consortium, and to submit and do all the paperwork, the lobby at the national and the European level in order to make sure that the project will have better chances to be successfully accepted. Time is money. And sometimes I think going with a company that has this very high ranking of success might actually in the short or even middle time term be more beneficial to your institution. They can also provide you a professional training. So if your institution also need, for example, some sort of ISO quality standard, or you want to shift, for example, from a traditional ICT or training company to a more greening technology-based solution, AcrossLimits also can help you not only to identify the right technologies to become more green, but also to identify European projects that will pay you back for this transition to become greener, which you know in this period of time, green is one of the most requested search and founded schema also in Europe. So the strongest sector are ICT, medical, education, engineering, and robotics. I'm sure most of the people here might be interested to hear more about this company later on. To help you, we can work with you to identify your issues and your objective. We can plan together the timing and how to build the proposal and to build the right consortium. As you can see in this slide, we have also more than 50 experts from different sectors, including definitely also Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Sarajevo as key experts that write proposals. And in terms of network, we are covering not only Europe, but as you see, also Asia, a little bit of Africa, and we have also consulting in the US and in Nordic countries. So I don't want to take more of my time. This is my contact details with Angel Giuliano, who is my director. I thank you very much. I pass the microphone again to Anita. Thank you so much for your timing.
Andrea, thank you very much. This is really, really interesting presentation. It's a really valuable presentation, and thank you for presenting AcrossLimits. So anyway, I would like to hand the floor to Franco Niccolucci. He's director of FabLab, and he will present the topic, is 3D the panacea for heritage conservation and valorization? So Franco, welcome.
Franco, please uncheck mute box.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to unmute the microphone. I was thanking you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity of sharing my ideas with colleagues from Sarajevo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So, as you can see, I hope you can see it, the title of my presentation ends with a question mark, and let me explain why. Just a couple of words on myself. I first met 3D for cultural heritage 23 years ago at a ecological conference in Barcelona in 1998, where one of the main topics was virtual reconstructions of archaeological sites. And my first activity within Europe on 3D applications dates back to the year 2000. Okay. And then I have carried out coordinating a number of related EU projects. But the same thing is that I am not a 3D expert, so I don't know almost nothing about 3D software, and don't have a cultural heritage background. So what I can do is asking questions and criticizing what others do, because I am not able to do them myself. And presently I am director of a department in the research agency of the University of Florence, after being a professor there until 13 years ago, and then working 5 years in Cyprus as the director of a research center there. But let's move to the presentation. And because I think that history is a teacher of life, I will start with a historical example. So you can see here a night photo of the Cathedral of Florence, which I believe world famous, and a detail of its dome, which was built in the 15th century by Filippo Brunelleschi. This was a main achievement, because at the time the dome was the highest in the world, and with the technology of the time, it was deemed to be impossible to build such a dome. Until the year 1400, the cathedral has no dome. So it ended the open sky with the tambour, which was about 50 meters wide, but no roof on top of it. After many discussions, in 1418, Brunelleschi was entrusted of the building together with his competitor Ghiberti. Both were also excellent sculptors, but Brunelleschi had some architectural expertise as well. His projects seemed too far-looking for the committee. They didn't trust him. So they need to be convinced, and for this reason, Brunelleschi made a wood model, which is still existing as is stored in the Cathedral Museum. You can see it on the picture. So it's sort of a first 3D model in history. There have been other 3D models, but this one was made on purpose for getting the entrusting of building the cathedral. Probably this somehow convinced the committee, but still they didn't trust Brunelleschi. And so they gave him Ghiberti as a sort of guardian. Of course, the architect was not happy with this partnership. And so he pretended to be ill and left the direction to Ghiberti alone, stating that he had the model, and could use it as guidance. Of course, Ghiberti was unable to manage the construction, as he needed information about the technology, the technique to be used, that the 3D model alone could not convey to him. Actually, Brunelleschi had invented a clever way of building the dome with the materials of his time. After some time, seeing that the work did not progress, the commissioners called back Brunelleschi as sole architect, and he got a salary of 100 florins compared to 3 florins of Ghiberti, who became his assistant and soon left the work. The method was so clever and so difficult that still in modern times there's raised a lot of research questions. You can see on top a physical model built with small bricks to check the building technique in vivo, and the other one is instead a computer model of the same thing. Actually, some years ago, some colleagues of my university documented well how this construction was possible. But the interesting thing is another, which I want to point out. Physical models cannot bring all available information with them. So there is a need of moving on. And recently, well, not so recently, the idea started some 20 years ago and was extensively used by NASA, the space agency of the US, to test their vehicles in laboratory conditions, but they did everything using a computer simulation. So they invented this concept of digital twin. A digital twin is a 3D model, also incorporating all the necessary information. So not only the shape, as you usually do with point cloud models, but also additional information. This picture shows, well, it's not a serious thing, it's just a wireframe model of Tour Eiffel, and the information on the side is just to indicate that you can add a lot of information within the model. So there has been a lot of work on these digital twins applied to architecture, actually to building new constructions, because you can include in the model all the information concerning services, for example, electricity, heating, plumbing, and so on, the materials used, and much, much more. And somebody had the idea to use it also for restoration and for conservation. For example, in the UK, there is the government has decided that every conservation intervention on buildings must produce this kind of 3D model, and so this is widespreading all around Europe. But it could be, an extension can be used also to document heritage. So the HBIM was created. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and HBIM adds on top the H of heritage or historical building. It is derived, as I said, from building engineering. The advantage is that a model can bring all the necessary information, so not only engineering information, but also additional content, Although the standard for BIM does not envisage this kind of heritage information, there have been several attempts to extend it, which have not been so successful because the most used software to deal with the BIM is proprietary software and is not so extensible. So there have been attempts to use instead the open source software and extend it with additional modules. But again, my criticism is that it is not enough because it works only for buildings. It does not work for sites. You cannot do a CAD model of a site, whatever, from Pompeii to Stonehenge or anything else. And it doesn't work for objects because for objects usually you have a point cloud models obtained from scans or any other techniques producing a point cloud model. There have been attempts to use such point cloud models for documenting conservation activity. One, for example, has been used in a fountain in Bologna, the Nettuno fountain, by some very clever people from Pisa. But it is difficult because while in CAD models you can split the whole object into the necessary parts at your as much as you want. So you can create a model which is made by small parts and each part is independent from the others. Doing the same for 3D point cloud models requires detecting the relevant parts. And this is still hard. There are some, there is some research on the topic involving also artificial intelligence to recognize the parts, but still it's in its infancy. Another problem with this kind of system is that it has, so far it is not linked to conservation documentation. So it is not really useful for conservation because there are two different archives, one made with BIM and the other one made with other technologies, including text, images, and so on. And last but absolutely not least, it does not store information about the intangible component. So what may happen is that you have an historic palace with all the H-beam necessary, with all the details, and you can test whatever intervention you do on it. And then kind of McDonald's comes out and says, we want to open a shop in the ground floor. You test the BIM model, no problem because there is a right space, and so you allow, you see, you have no objection. But of course, the intangible component of the historic palace would not be improved by the presence of a McDonald's at the ground floor. So it's impossible in practice to consider such intangible component which every historic building, every heritage asset has in itself and which is part of being actually a heritage asset. In any case, coming to what you do and to the subject of today, it is a digital model, not a physical one. There is a strong push in Europe towards digitalization, which is good. And the European Commission pushes researchers, heritage institutions, member states to adopt 3D as a, well, the main way of guaranteeing conservation, safeguard, and preservation. So that's why I put the question mark at the end. Is this the real solution? is 3D sufficient for that? Let's see, let's move on. One idea could be to extend the digital twin concept, extending it to the heritage digital twin concept. Please do not use this image. Of course, you can record it, but don't use it because it is unpublished. So it's a new idea, but I don't care. I like people copying my ideas because it means that they are good. The idea here is to replace 3D-centric information with a semantic graph. So to move outside the perspective which makes 3D models, 3D CAD models actually, the root of all the information about heritage assets, move from here to a graph where there is no root. There are pivot concepts, in this case, the heritage asset and its digital counterpart, the heritage digital twin. But you can move, you can search information here starting from every point, including a 3D model. Because if you have a look at this diagram, you can see that everything is interconnected. And so it's a kind of documentation system called Semantic Graph that can be explored starting from every part. The black component is the reality. The red component is the digital counterpart. And as you can see, these are interrelated. This model includes 3D, which is the important part of it, but also imagery, 2D, videos, photos, and so on. Documentation, including conservation documentation. And above all, it includes stories. With this term, I mean everything, every kind of witness, every kind of tradition, every kind of story, indeed, related to the building. So it includes also a good part of its intangible component, but it also includes whatever you want to attach to it. If you like, and if it is feasible, you can also attach personal stories. So, for example, Florence has a beautiful late medieval building, which was the seat of its municipal government in Middle Ages. And it, of course, it should be well documented. But I could add, since now it is the offices of the municipality, I could add my personal experience. I married there in when was it? 1977. So that's also, that would also have, of course, this must go into a knowledge base managed by appropriate software, enabling searching and retrieving information and using it for any use you would like. One interesting possibility offered by this is also involves artificial intelligence applications. Of course, climate change makes this kind of disasters unfortunately more frequent. So I took the example of a flood. Floods are, well, sometimes they arrive and there is no way of forecasting them. But almost always you can get meteo alert. Heavy rains are expected in this area. It's a generic flood risk alert, but since there are convenient meteorological models and there is a model of the ground, you can expect that rivers may flood and some parts may be flooded. So if this generic flood alert reaches the internal disaster prevention system, which is an artificial intelligence system, it may check heritage asset location and type, getting the information from the knowledge base based on the heritage digital twin, and this heritage at risk. So what can be flooded if there is this strong rain in this area, and such rivers may flood and the water level may reach this? This is very easy to compute, having a ground model and knowing the exact location also in height for heritage assets. Possible damages may be evaluated, but above all, the mitigation measures may be taken. Of course, the most obvious one is to alert guardians and tell them, okay, there may be a flood, so please move the paintings of that museum to the first floor instead of the ground floor. There may be barriers and they can be put in place, but also automated system may be activated. And again, let me tell you a short story about my hometown, Florence. There was a disastrous flood in 1966, and one of the many damages it made concerned a famous medieval painting by Cimabue, crucifix, which was kept in a church in Florence. After a very long restorations, and very difficult because the painting was badly damaged, it was put again in place at a higher position, but also a manual system for raising it still higher has been put in place. So when I went to the inauguration, I saw that our Minister of Culture pushed a lever, and magically the painting went up several meters. It is a manual system, so the guardian has to go there and push the lever. It could be completely automated and alerted and activated by an intelligent intelligent system like the one depicted here. Similarly, there may be interventions for earthquakes. Unfortunately, we are not able to forecast earthquakes as yet, and other disasters like fires. Will it reach some valuable heritage asset, and so on? So, I think this is my last slide. What is left for physical 3D models? Well, of course, creativity. As a colleague said before, 3D print is affordable for many. So it can be an interesting exercise for makers, homemakers, let's say. We are seeing a phenomenon which is interesting, of people creating videos and more on using social networks. For example, I have seen some very nice TikTok videos made by the archaeological museums of Taranto. That could be also, that's easier, but it could also be extended to physical 3D modeling. And of course, it is useful for valorization and presentation. I like to use the term valorization instead of exploitation or whatever, but because it's really expressive in my opinion. First obvious use is in museums for touchable replicas, which are especially useful for the blind. In this case, just scanning and then printing is not enough. The collaboration of people with such special needs is required, because the surface which will be touched needs to have a special frame to react, to convey tactile sensations in the right way. There has been some fear that this, after the COVID epidemic, was no more interesting because people is not confident in touching things. But we can bypass somehow this issue. It can be used to replace fragile artifacts in exhibitions, as you see from the picture on the left. The small boat you can perhaps see in this photo is a boat which was, well, is a replica, a 3D printed replica of a boat dating back to the 12th century BC, found in Cyprus, which is supposed to reproduce very well the shape of the small ships which were used in the Eastern Mediterranean in those times, which are particular because they are, as you can see from the shape. There was an exhibition at the Smithsonian Museum, but the boat could not be dispatched because it is too fragile. So a 3D copy was sent instead. And you can see here the person with white hair, who is the president of Cyprus of the time, looking at this replica. So fragile artifacts can be replaced by 3D replicas. A more recent example is the 3D printed replica, which Italy sent to the Dubai Expo as a representative of Italian art. The reproduction of this big statue was sponsored by Hexagon, which is a subsidiary of Leica, which also provided the necessary equipment for 3D scanning and for printing. This statue, well, I like it, but it must be very important because it has been sent now in 2021 as a representative, and it was also the first museum exhibit scanned in Italy in 22 years ago, in 1999, by a team led by Marc Levoy, an operation which raised a lot of interest about it and started the most important research teams, Italian research teams on this subject. Okay, I think I made enough questions, so I believe that I am done. Yes, I am. And I hope that I have induced some reflection in your minds. Instead of presenting projects, I may have a few of them. But I thought that sometimes asking questions is better than offering answers.
Yeah, it was a great presentation, Franco, really. And if someone has a question, I would kind of like to ask just to wait a bit more for other speakers to present their topics, and then maybe we can share like questions and ask our speakers.
Actually, I made the questions.
Yeah,
so, for answers, not for questions. Yeah, I'm joking.
That's good as well. Okay, so I would kindly ask Kenan Varda and Ernad Beslagic from the University of Zenica and Mirza Oruç, I believe he's also with us, to present the topic 3D printing at the University of Zenica, tombstones and D&H UNESCO heritage. Please join us.
Sorry, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, thank you. Dakle, ja ću ipak na bosanskom jeziku, pošto nismo stigli u prezentaciju prevesti na engleski. Nisam znao tačno koji je jezik danas zastupljen. Ok. Kratko uvod, dakle, tema rada je 3D digitalizacija i printanje skulpturi iz nacionalnog spomenika Smrike. Kratko da kažem o spomeniku i o ideji projekta. Dakle, mi smo dobili poziv iz jedne firme u Novom Travniku da je otkriven napokon dugo je već tu naravno taj spomenik, ali je u zadnje vrijeme bio zapostavljen pa je otkriven spomenik ponovo i treba da se restaurira i tako dalje. I desila se jedna potreba da se ovakav jedan spomenik skenira, da se napravi 3D model, da se napravi printani model i tako dalje. I eto, mi smo prihvatili jedan takav projekat. Za početak samo da kažem o čemu se radi i kakav je to spomenik. Uglavnom ljudi misle da su to stećci, dakle neki srednjovjekovni stećci. U stvari se radi o spomenicima koji su relativno novi. Dakle, 1975. godine je spomenik podignut. Podignut je za 700 žrtava fašističkog terora koji se desio u Drugom svjetskom ratu. Ideja je da ovih 12 spomenika koji su parovima po 2 otprilike tih nekih nepravilnih oblika budu kao neki stražari koji će štititi nevine ljude od takvih nekih nasilja i fašističkog pokreta. Taj spomenik je napravio čuveni arhitekta Bogdan Bogdanović, jedan je od najvećih regionalnih graditelja u tom nekom periodu iza Drugog svjetskog rata. Dakle, bavio se memorialnom arhitekturom. Evo ove godine, dakle, općina Travnik i firma GSTMT iz Novog Travnika i njihova direktorica su naručili restauraciju ovog spomenika iz razloga što su 2 bila oštećena, pa je bila potreba da se to restaurira i vrati u neko prvobitno stanje. Dakle, to je neki spomenik koji će sada ili je već na listi zaštite UNESCO-a, a nama jako blizu, eto za njega se nije nekako ni znalo. Karakterističan je zanimljivih oblika, tako da je bilo interesantno tim ljudima da se napravi jedan 3D model ovako jednog zanimljivog objekta. Da kažem nekoliko stvari kako je to išlo i kojom opremom se radila digitalizacija ovakvog jednog objekta. Dakle, samo skeniranje vršeno je pomoću skenera Artek Eva. Dakle, to je ručni skener koji je proizvođač njegove iz Luksemburga i može se veliki broj snimaka raditi i obrađivati veliki broj tačaka sa ovakvim jednim skenerom. Dakle, njegova rezolucija je otprilike 16 fremova u sekundi maksimalna, dakle 16 slika u sekundi. Sad je zavisno kako se modeli skeniraju, dakle on se koristi, on pušta strukturirano svjetlo na objekat. Sad koliko je objekat velik, toliko je rezolucija potrebna da bude manja ili veća. Ovaj put, za ovaj konkretan projekat, dakle, objekat je bio jako velikih dimenzija, tako da smo morali smanjiti tu rezoluciju i jako veliki broj slika i skenova je pravljen prilikom rada na ovakvom jednom objektu. Ono što se tiče samog skenera, on je jako jednostavan za upotrebu, dakle, možete vidjeti na ovoj slici tu, dakle, doduše ima tu povezanost pomoću kablova, dakle, nije ništa bežično, to je malo samo nezgodno kad se radi na terenu, negdje kad se radi unutar prostorija, tu vrlo jednostavno za korištenje. Dakle, potrebno je da ima svoj laptop, da je spojen na struju i da se s njim može na taj način i van recimo nekih zatvorenih prostorija upravljati. Evo nekoliko samo još podataka, dakle, udaljenost skeniranja, jako bitna kod 3D skenera, dakle, udaljenost od 0,4 metra do 1 metra u odnosu na objekat. Dakle, sve ispod ili izvan tog dijapazona, onda skenovi ne budu jako dobri precizni. Dakle, rezolucija skenira 0,2 mm, a tačnost je čak i 0,1 mm, tako da je prilično dobra tačnost za neke objekte kao što je ovdje korišteno baš u ovom konkretnom primjeru. Dakle, ne treba nešto ni previše precizno, mada nije ni to zanemariva preciznost ovakvog jednog skenera. Što se tiče drugih objekata i konkretno mašinskog fakulteta, mi imamo jedan drugi skener koji radi preciznije, na preciznost 0,05 mm, tako da njega koristimo za neke mašinske dijelove, manje elemente i tako dalje. Još je bitno reći da je rezolucija ovog skenera 1,3 megapiksela, a rekao sam već radi na 16 frame. Ok, konkretno o skeniranju ovog objekta. Dakle, na ovaj teren smo morali da donesemo opremu, kao što sam rekao, skener, laptop, ali što je ključna stvar ovdje bila, nije bilo blizu izvora struje, tako da smo morali koristiti benzinski agregat. Dakle, tu smo instalirali na ovom terenu gdje se nalaze ovi spomenici. Što je još bitno, objekti su bili otprilike visine 2,2-2,3 metra, tako da smo morali koristiti određena pomagala da skeniramo objekat s visine, dakle nije ga moguće bilo sa zemlje skenirati cjelokupnog, jer prilikom skeniranja dakle mora se voditi računa da se svaki dio skenira i više puta pređe da bi se mogle te slike kasnije lakše obrađivati i spajati. Ono što je bitno još, da smo jedan od najboljih primjera je bio ovaj primjer spomenika gdje utječe svjetlost na skeniranje. Dakle, ovdje gdje je objekat i ovaj spomenik, kao što vidite na slici desno, bio osvijetljen suncem, tu je skeniranje bilo jako teško, tako da smo morali čekati sumrak nekako da nastavimo skeniranje i da dovršimo dijelove koji se nisu nalazili u hladu. Oni koji su nalazili u hladu, njega smo skenirali tokom dana. Dakle, to je bilo malo nezgodno iz razloga što ovi svi optički skeneri prilikom skeniranja teže registruju osvijetljene površine, dakle tu fali određeni dijelov prilikom skeniranja. Ono što je bitno za konkretan projekat, ukupno je napravljeno 27 skenova i ukupan fajl je iznosio 11,1 gigabajt. Dakle, jako velik spomenik, veliki broj slika, veliki broj skenova, tako da i fajl koji se treba obrađivati kasnije u softveru koji dolazi uz EVA Artek skener je bilo prilično komplikovano. Dakle, Artek Studio 15 Professional je softver koji se koristi, koji dolazi uz ovaj skener i u njemu se kasnije radila obrada. Ovako to otprilike izgleda, dakle ovdje je lista, na ovoj slici se vidi lista skenova koje smo napravili i kako ti skenovi izgledaju, dakle to su nekompletni skenovi sa određenim površinama gdje smo mi vodili računa i pratili gdje je koji dio skeniran, da li je nešto propušteno ili nije i onda smo pribjegli metode spajanja ovih skenova. Dakle, na svakom od skenova koji bi skenirali pa sljedeći nastavili sa skeniranjem, bitno je da nađemo neku referentnu tačku tako da smo mogli te skenove spajati. Dosta toga smo automatski uspjeli uraditi, ali naravno neke stvari smo morali i ručno da sklapamo. Tu je u stvari najveći dio ovog posla, da se dobije taj neki STL model, to je univerzalni model koji se može koristiti u raznim softverima, pa i u softveru za printanje, za editovanje tih površina i tako dalje. Ovdje desno možete vidjeti kako izgleda kad smo sve ove skenove koje su ovako nabacani spojili. Na njemu se posebno ovako slika postavljena iz razloga što možete vidjeti u dnu ovog spomenika da ima rupa, dakle da nešto nismo uspjeli skenirati, to smo morali u post-procesingu, dakle naknadnoj obradi, popunjavati ovakve modele i spomenike. Ali i to smo uspjeli uraditi pomoću softvera Mesh Mixer, a poslije i softveru SolidWorks za 3D modeliranje. Naravno, napravljen je ovakav jedan model, dakle to je trougalni model koji je sastavljen od tih tetraedara, dakle u univerzalnom formatu. Nakon što smo to pripremili, napravili smo ovako jedno postolje koje nam je bilo bitno da lakše printamo ovakav jedan model, jer smo trebali da napravimo nekoliko ovakvih primjera kao suvenira za ovo prilikom samog printanju. Dakle, tako je izgledala priprema. U softveru Ultimaker Cura, dakle to je softver koji dolazi uz Ultimaker softver, uz Ultimaker 3D printer, dakle mi na mašinskom fakultetu imamo 3 različita Ultimaker printera i na sve 3 smo printali ove spomenike iz razloga što smo imali malo vremena da isporučimo 12 komada ovakvih spomenika od plastike. Dakle, desno vidite kako izgleda priprema u softveru, lijevo izgleda printanje na samom 3D printeru. Šta je bilo karakteristično ovdje, samo ovi oslonci, dakle što mi kažemo armatura je laički, dakle ono što je bio support, podrška prilikom printanja, tu smo morali malo raditi prototipove, neke izmjene i tako dalje, da nam ne smeta, da što manje imamo tog viška materijala, jer desno se tačno vidi da prilikom printanja dolazi tako do većeg broja tih supporta, odnosno te podrške za printanje, pa smo to malo izmijenili, onda lijevo se vidi ovako kako smo to riješili i oslobodili sam print da izgleda malo ljepše. Dakle, realna veličina je bila 2,2 metra, konačna verzija je 12,5 cm, dakle napravili smo umanjeni model, napravili smo 12 takvih komada za isporuku našem naručiocu i u ispunjenost ovakvog printa je bila 10%. Ovako izgleda tih 12 komada koji smo isporučili. Na vrijeme, šta je svrha bila, na taj dan kad se isporučili ovi suveniri, bio je dan kad se otvarala obnovljena kuća našeg pisa Ive Andrića. Pošto je on rodovni stravnik, ovo iz Novog Travnika, eto ljudi koji su bili domaćini tog jednog događaja su imali potrebu da ovi suvenire svojim stranim partnerima i gostima izvana podijeli te suvenire i da ih odvedu na to mjesto svrnike, tako da smo tu svrhu ispunili, na kraju ispalo prilično dobro, prilično tačno i vjerodostojna mala replika je napravljena ovakvog jednog spomenika. Bitno je samo naglasiti, kao što sam na početku rekao, da je firma GSTMT Travnik naručilac ovog projekta i da su oni financijski podržali ovaj projekt da bi se ovo sve realizovalo, a posebno njihova vlast Snježana Kopruner koja se bavi sad ovako nekim zaštitom određenih spomenika, kulturom i tako dalje. Ona i sama investitor skoro 1 milion maraka u obnovu kuće Ive Andrića, tako da sad s njima imamo tu saradnju i dalje želi da nas angažuju na nekim tim projektima iz kulture. Eto, toliko hvala na pažnji, koliko ima pitanja svim na raspolaganju.
Thank you, Kenan, very much. And you are doing really great work at Idea Lab, and I just wish you all the best for the future work.
Thank you, Anita.
So now I'm going to give the floor to Neven Vlakic. He's a senior IT officer at Archaeological Museum Zadar, and he's going to present the topic 3D souvenir printing. Neven, welcome.
Hvala, dobar dan svima, greetings to everyone. Ja ću također pričati na domaćem jeziku, što je moj hrvatski jezik. Pripremio sam za vas prezentaciju 3D printanja suvenira, tako da ja sam iz Arheološkog muzeja Zadar, tu imate moj mail kontakt, tako da ako neki muzej ili bilo koga zanima vezano za suvenire, može se svakako obratiti meni, a i vama FabLab Bosne i Hercegovine, ja sam se tako recimo obratio FabLabu Hrvatska, gdje pozdravljam Roberta Vrdovića koji je inače i predsjednik i mislim da je on i osnovao udrugu FabLab Hrvatska. Dakle, mi smo se sa printanjem susreli, počelo je, kažem, baš u noći muzeja 2015. godine, to je jedno u Hrvatskoj se obilježava svake godine posljednjim petkom u prvom mjesecu. Vjerujem da je i u Bosni i Hercegovini isto slično, imate tu noć muzeja i moj ravnatelj je dakle nekako upoznao na nekom prijašnjem događaju Roberta Vrdovića i dogovorili su da bi nam on mogao posuditi 3D printer baš za tu noć, jer mi tada jednostavno je bila prebrza ta noć. Noć je bila, inače tema je bila izumi i otkrića i ravnatelj ima ideju da mi eto tako kako 3D printat sada Augusta. I mi inače u muzeju imamo u tom antičkom postavu carsku skupinu koja datira iz polovine 1. stoljeća, koja je stvarno svjetska i reprezentativna i u njoj dominira taj kip cara Augusta koji inače visine 230 cm. Tako da smo, kažem, bio je uspješna noć je prošla, stvarno to je bio boom 3D printer, jer ga u gradu nema i u Hrvatskoj to stvarno ga nije bilo, nego oni na Arhitektonskom fakultetu radi, znači profesor Roberto Vrdović i ima ga Arheološki muzej u Zagrebu. Tako da stvarno je bio boom, mediji su nas zasuli, novinari, baš zadarski ili lokalni mediji, a u 4. mjesecu nam je stigao taj kupljeni Ultimaker model broj 2. Roberto mi je svaka mu čast pomagao, jer i meni je to bilo novo, iako sam informatičar, stvarno nisam znao raditi, ali ima baš kolege prije što su držali sad predavanje, Cura program koji je stvarno lagan za napraviti taj G-kod za printanje, stvarno nije problem, ali opet neko ti treba to pokazati, on je to stvarno besplatna pomoć pruže, ali vjerujem da tako i vi udruge FabLab i vaša radi, on je to sve preko udruge organizirao i obuku kratko, ali nije tu stvarno ništa trebalo puno, stvarno se brzo snađe raditi u tom Cura programu. Nakon toga, evo, možete vidjeti doli baš to je na 057 info portal zadarski, gdje sam ja, inače to 4.5. je taj Star Wars dan, ili dan ratova zvijezda, inače May the Fourth se kaže. Taj dan zove njihov, kao zadi May the Fourth. i portal je sutradan vidio tu našu objavu na Fejsu i napisao je članak o tome, jer sam ja baš tada smo pojačano printali te 3D male modele cara Augusta od 10 cm gdje su stvarno razgrabili, tu ih ima ne znam 40-ak na slici, to se doslovno par dana razgrabilo, a mi na dan, kako vam reka, radimo 8 sati, printa 7 sat vremena, dakle eventualno ih 6 isprintamo na dan. Mi nismo mogli isprintati koliko se to djece grabilo. Prvo smo imali, kao što možete vidjeti, taj neki srebrni filament. Kasnije sam ja počeo nabavljati u svim bojama, jer su jednostavno svake te imate od svake boje tog cara Augusta objekt. Inače, kako je kip visok 230 cm, to je bila 2015. godina, nije nam imao to niko skanirati, nego smo našli firmu geodetsku iz Varaždina, Vektra, koja je došla i cijeli dan je skanirala sa 3D lasenskim skaniranjem taj kip. Tako da smo onda dobili tu datoteku SL koju onda smo prebacili u G-kod i stavio da bude, ne znam, 10 cm taj car August. Ovo je sad, recimo, prilog za županijsku panoramu gdje nas i nacionalna televizija došla snimati, to je već bilo 1,5 godine nakon. I tu već možete vidjeti u raznim bojama te naše male suvenire oko 10 cm, gdje imamo i taj kip orla. To u stvari je sve postav antike koji je stvarno reprezentativan i on je nov, on je baš bio otvoren 2014. godine. Tako da smo baš išli sa tim suvenirima predmeta iz antičkog odjela. Kaže, ima taj kip orla, glava dječaka, poprce Herakla i to se stvarno isto razgrabilo. Mogu vam reći jedno da baš za prvu godinu 2015. Augusta se preko 200 komada u raznim bojama razgrabilo. Ovi ostali su manje, nakon njega je najbolje išao ovaj kip orla isto također postav antike. Ovo je sad u Zadarskom listu, to je 2018. izašlo, tu sam ja od isto car August, on nam stvarno najbolje ide, onda smo došli do ideje da bi mogli samo to bisu tu napraviti od njega, isprintati taj model koji bi onda naš muzejski tehničar Sario napravio kao umjetni kamen, što puno ljepše i nekako starinski izgleda, i gdje bi se to također prodavalo i to nam je rasprodano. Ne možemo napraviti koliko mi možemo prodati, a i imamo i također Svetog Donata i razne modele također on izrađuje. Ovo je naš, dakle, muzejski tehničar Frane Šumić i ovo je njegova radiona. Ovo lijevo što drži možete vidjeti, ovo je printani objekt Augusta koji je 38 cm, dakle Ultimaker može printati maksimum 20 cm, onda smo stavili, ajmo napraviti neki maksimum, pa smo u 2 dijela ga printali po 19 cm i onda on napravio ovo desni taj što drži taj od umjetnog kamena car August. Ovo je bista koju sam prije, koja je izašla u tom Zadarskom listu prije. Objasnio mi je taj postupak izrade, tako da nadam se da ću moći ja vama prenijeti, mada on to svakako puno bolje zna. I ako nekog bude zanimalo, svakoga mogu dati kontakt i od njega, da mu se obrati način na koji on to izrađuje i tako dalje. Uglavnom ovdje možete vidjeti, to je dakle 3D printani model biste cara Augusta, na nju ona se premaže izolir pastom i na to se stavi, dakle, sloj gline debljine nekih 1 cm. Onda se to prelije gipsom i ispadne vanjski kalup, kao što možete vidjeti. Izvadi se taj premazani model gipsa, ovoga 3D modela. U to se onda u taj vanjski kalup se ulije silikon i dobije se taj zapravo silikonski kalup u koji se uljeva gips i izlaze ti njegovi umjetni modeli od umjetnog kamena. Također, ovo je baš novi suvenir koji smo imali 2020. godine, to je ta glava dječaka, također, kažem, antički odjel, postav. Ona visina, evo, kako je inače ta glava dječaka od 16 cm, tako da mi u prirodnom obliku izrađujemo printasanje od 16 cm i stvarno da u postavu to vrlo slično ovome izgleda, kao što možete vidjeti, to je ovo što on radi od umjetnog kamena i stvarno je reprezentativno. Ovo sam dakle naveo, dakle ovo su 3D suveniri u tim raznim bojama, ovo su ta kao njihova kamena braća. Inače, jedino smo za sada augusta koristili to 3D lasersko skaniranje za recimo ovog kamenog orla, glavu dječaka, poprce Herakla. Za to smo koristili 123D Catch program od Autodeska koji je ugašen 2017. Tako da smo mi do 2017 napravili sve neke printane suvenire koje mi dalje printamo. Sad sam čuo sam ima novi program je izbačen isto koji je open source koji se ne plaća, jer opet muzeju ne možemo kupovati i ulagati u programe, nastavimo nabaviti to što je open source program. I kažem, sa tim 123D Catchem od Autodeska mi smo ovo sve napravili što stvarno izgleda doslovno kao original, detaljno i baš smo zadovoljni bili, ali eto kako oni žele naplaćivati tu uslugu, jednostavno, stvarno nije bio super program. Sad sam čuo da ima taj Riga 3D program francuski, pokušat ćemo u njemu nešto novo raditi, opet nas je poremetila i ta korona. Stvarno planiramo također nabaviti novi model Ultimakera, tako da svakako postoje razni 3D printeri, s Ultimaker smo se pronašli, stvarno je lagan za upravljanje, taj njihov Kivra program. Ako ko kažem ima pitanja od muzeja, svakako možete preporučiti da me kontaktira, ja opet mogu kolegu Franu Šunića. Tako da zahvaljujem vam još jednom i do skorog viđenja. Pozdrav!
Nevena, thank you very much. And it's really good to hear that you had such a successful cooperation with the local FabLab, and it's really inspirational for us as well. So I'm going to give a floor to Selma Rizic. She's from Sarajevo Graphics Group, Faculty of Electrical Engineering, University of Sarajevo, and she's going to present a topic on digital heritage from extended reality to 3D print. Welcome, Selma.
Hello, Anita. I hope that you hear me.
Yes, we can.
That everybody hears me. I will now share my screen, and I will present the the work of Sarajevo Graphics Group in the extended reality technologies, and I will briefly tell about our experience in 3D printing. So what is the motivation for our work? Everybody knows that cultural heritage enables us to understand the past, but actually these modern technologies enable us to understand cultural heritage. These technologies have a great potential in visualization of cultural monuments and other issues about cultural heritage, also intangible heritage. And additional quality that our group is pursuing is to add stories to the cultural heritage reconstructions. So in one sentence, our goal is to revive the forgotten cultural heritage in collective memory of people. We are called Sarajevo Graphics Group, and we have been founded in 2004 at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, University of Sarajevo. I established this laboratory in computer graphics research because my background is computer science. I have a PhD in computer graphics, but also I expanded that to visual arts, computer animation, multimedia, and in the last 10 years, interactive digital storytelling and virtual reality. I've been working as well at the Bosnian radio television as a graphic designer for 26 years. So I combine in my research and our group's research the digital technologies and the artistic disciplines. In 2010, we founded the NGO called Digi.pa, where we actually joined our colleagues from work on our projects that are from other disciplines. Of course, in order to create a successful digital heritage project, it cannot be done only by technical people. We need to invite archaeologists, historians, writers, film and video professionals, musicians, and all the other people that are parts of our crew in order to create something that is engaging and attractive for general audience. Our projects can be divided in 3 big groups. First is the cultural heritage visual presentations, where we present using these mentioned technologies the cultural monuments that do not exist anymore or they exist only in remains. Also, we have been working for many years on virtual museums, digitalizing museum collections, and adding digital contents to the museum exhibitions, offering stories and the context of the exhibits and attracting the people to the museums. And in the last few years, we are working on virtual reality movies. We are producing them. They can be watched on YouTube or using the virtual reality headset. Now I will play a short trailer to show you what actually we do. Have seen that we are using virtual and augmented reality technologies in our projects, and that we are using also actors, which is one of the features of our work, as the actors are not used by many groups. They are considered quite expensive, but we believe that actors can really add the human emotion to the cultural heritage presentations. Our first project was done in 2005. It was digitalization of the statue from Donja Zgošća. It is a cultural monument from medieval period. It's a gravestone, very nicely decorated. And of course, at that time, we didn't have any equipment or money, so we borrowed it from our partners, University of Bristol, from Professor Alan Chalmers, that Professor Niccolucci knows very well. And we used also the laser scanner for scanning the monument, but then we also printed some versions of these scanned monuments long time ago, like in 2008, because a company from Bosnia and Herzegovina was a representative of this 3D printers company, and they gave us for free to try their 3D printers to try to print our models. So we printed a small model of the city hall in Sarajevo and a small statue monument. Then also we recreated a cultural object called Isai Beyteke in 2008, and we tried to print it also with this 3D printer. That was a kind of adventure because there were some thin parts that we couldn't print, so they were not in the print. But we printed also a colored version of the same monument in the more expensive 3D printer by a Slovenian company that was collaborator with this company, and we used the VRML model to as a basis for 3D print. In 2009, we created the virtual model of the Church of the Holy Trinity in Mostar that was completely destroyed during the war in Bosnia, and only now the physical reconstruction is finished. And we created the model in Maya software, then exported it in OBJ, adjusted a little bit in materialized software, and then exported an STL, used again Z Corporation printer with this print resolution on the slide. It took 4 hours, and for impregnation 2 hours, so the whole model was printed about 6 hours. Then in 2009, we printed another Orthodox church, a cathedral in Sarajevo. The Orthodox priests wanted to preserve the present state of the monument because they were preparing the reconstruction. So we created both the 3D model that was interactive, and we tried to print it as well with Z printer, this time Z510. Again, it took about 6 hours, and the fixing was about 4 hours. As you can see, the 3D print is not our primary technology, but we just tried to experiment with it a little bit, and it gave us quite satisfactory results. White Bastion is a fortress in Sarajevo that is a cultural monument, archaeological site from 3 time periods, from medieval period, Ottoman period, and Austrian-Hungarian period. And through history, this fortress has been changing its shape. So the archaeologists wanted us to visualize the versions of this monument in various time periods. So we created 6 3D models of this fortress, and we decided to, of course, we added the digital storytelling with the actor, but then we decided to print one of these models. And this print was our latest print in 2018. It was done by Ultimaker tool, and actually we printed the model of the fortress in gray color, but then the artist added these colors and this foliage, so it looks much better now, and it looks a little bit like kind of sculpture. So it was also done as a final project of one of our master's students. At the end, we did some 3D printing also within the Horizon 2020 project, Aymara Culture, that we were a partner in. It is about underwater cultural heritage. It finished in 2020, and the goal was to raise awareness on the underwater cultural heritage, because that's the heritage that is the least accessible. And we recreated 3 selected sites through virtual and augmented reality. Our group was in charge of digital storytelling for that project. So we were, our storytelling was a part of several deliverables in the project. We made a pilot application, the story about Kyrenia shipwreck from Cyprus. Then we contributed in cutscenes in the seafaring game, as well in the dry visits applications. And finally, in the 3D puzzles. 3D puzzles is a kind of a small application that where the users can download the 3D parts of replicas of certain cultural monuments or artifacts, and then put them together as a puzzle. So now, instead of explaining how it's done, I will show a short video where we recorded this process, and you can see how it is done. So this is something that we did with 3D printing. Again, I'm saying it's not our primary activity, but we are super happy to collaborate in the future with the FabLab and people who are doing this 3D printing and to contribute because I believe that actually we use these technologies to recreate cultural heritage, and we offer many aspects of these technologies, but in order to complete the circle of virtual reconstruction, the 3D print is really something that is very useful both for the museums or also for common people, because I believe that quite soon, in a few years, everybody will have a 3D printer at home. Thanks again to the FabLab for inviting us, and it was great to see all of you.
Thank you so very much. We are also looking forward to our collaboration, and it was really great presentation, interesting videos, and it's really nice to hear that you had collaboration with Franco Niccolucci. So that's kind of like small word.
Exactly.
Exactly. So if someone has any kind of question, please feel free to ask right now, or you can also maybe send questions to me and I can forward to our guest speakers. So anyway, thank you once again to all of you, like to our guest speakers, to our participants. It was really, really good workshops, and I do believe that we are going to collaborate again in the future. This is just a pilot project, so I believe we will have enough room to collaborate again. Thank you once again, and have a nice rest of the day and the rest of the week. And it's really good to know you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Pozdrav svima, greetings. Bye.
Bye bye all. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye, Andrea.